Tomb of Sargeras, yes. Has everyone made their lists at the moment of the sort of gear that they're going to be after from each boss? I know in our guild we are, I suppose, considering, we ought to talk about it properly, because there's a Fury Warrior who is desperate. We don't do split runs, but he is desperate to do split runs at least for the first boss, so that we can all the melee can get the, well, not all the melee, that'd be ridiculous, but so that we can potentially increase the number of infernal cinders that we get, because that's that trinket where it gets better the more people have it. But then what I said is we'll need to check first of all that people would use it. It's all right saying, oh, let's, you know, we can get it for like up to, we wouldn't actually get it for 4 people, we could get it for potentially 4 people, but well, I suppose more if you can get doubles of it, can't you? But it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone wants to use it, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the people who get it would necessarily then on every sort of progress fight we do for the next couple of weeks either. That's the problem with that trinket. It's very, very dodgy, because I mean, if it's good for you regardless of if anyone has it, then that's fine, but if it's not, then you have to constantly check how many people do have it, and even then you have to make sure that you're always going to be within 10 yards and how much of the fight you're not going to be in 10 yards. They're a pain in the arse, these trinkets that are coming up. So the one I think I'm going to be favouring is potentially, well, the one with the poison debuff is supposed to be quite a good one, actually. Surprisingly, I was surprised about that. And I suppose the one that just stacks up strength and hope to stay above 50% health. But I don't know what everyone else is thinking. But, I mean, these days when you're in a sort of guild that does loot council, I suppose everyone has to consider which pieces of tier they really want and which trinkets they want at the very least. Yes, that's the problem. I mean, that's what I was saying about the trinkets when I did that video. It's very, some of them are very strategy dependent. Not necessarily, because like I'm pretty sure this. My memory may be a bit hazy here, but I'm pretty sure when the trinkets were first available for testing, the fire damage, when you had more people with it, it just increased the fire damage, just a straight up buff to it. Now what it does is it adds 10% crits per person, which is still, you know, you get a few people getting that, and that's still going to translate to be a fairly large number. But there's a bit of RNG with it there. And also, you've got to remember it's off the first boss. So, just item level wise, it'll be slightly below the others. Baseline, obviously, you can get lucky in Titanforge. And because it's off the first boss, it's the boss you're going to kill the most. So you've got more cracks at potentially getting a few Titanforge versions. But it is this thing that there are other trinkets that are potentially going to be better for various classes. Certainly my own. I'm not going to be an expert on enough other people's classes. And it's this thing that we're going to have this annoying... every time we're going to do this boss, people with it are going to be asking who else is going to be using it. Oh, dear me. And you're going to get people as well. Just, I mean, we've had this in Nighthold, I suppose. Looking at like the top passers and going, oh, they use those trinkets, so those are the trinkets I should use. But they sometimes fail to realise that actually they just had very, very lucky procs with those trinkets. Well, in this case, it could just be, you know, if it's Infernal Cinders, that's one of them. It could just be that there's 6 people in the raid melee that had it, and they were all stacked on top of each other. So that'd be plus 60% crit. Imagine if you actually had 40% crit. Hi, Trillia. But conversions of yeah. In many fights, I don't use it because the guild needs to do special stuff. I don't use it on a lot of fights, I have to say. And I procced a 915 one last week. It's still useful on Gul'dan. Mostly not because you get an extra use out of it, because you don't, because you're actually holding off on quite a lot of occasions, which normally you wouldn't use Cough for if you're going to do that. But it just, there's a couple of times when it allows me to use it at a much more convenient time. Hiya. But I don't use convergence that much because it's not allowing me, on most fights, it's not allowing me to use it at a better time. And it's, I don't think on any fight allowing me to get an extra one out. And even because you can't predict that anyway, because your kill times, because your kill times are going to get shorter each week anyway, even on the ones you use it. You don't need it on Tichondrius to dump bats, because your Avenging Wrath is available before the bat phase anyway. The phase, each non-bat phase lasts more than 2 minutes, so it's available anyway. I use Crusade on the bats, but it's there, it's ready without me using Convergence of Fates. So I tend to use a stat stick, or no, Horn of Valley usually, actually, and sometimes like the Scorpion Crystal, or sometimes I might use a stat stick this week actually to get me to move around, because I've got one that the Hunger one. Oh, thank you. Can't read blue. Valinor. But yes, we've got. So we've got to start now doing our strategies, because that's so that we can actually get into Timos Argyris a lot quicker than we did in Nighthold. Our raid leader's looking at those at the moment. I've been having a look at a few. I've got massive things on at the moment. I've got to get my Rep Paladin guide ready for release for 7.2.5, and then I've got to make sure that I know what to do on each of the fights as well. Yes, there seems. I mean, Nighthold mostly was single target anyway, even though there were certain periods of time when it's AoE as well. I think a lot of the focus was essentially single target. Scorpion, a little bit of an exception, but Chronomatic Anomaly was, even if you were on the ads, that was only a brief period of time, and then you're back on single target. Trilliax, you occasionally had one other ad in there. That is a thing actually for Retsalim, that when you because I haven't really changed my talents much from fight to fight, if at all. And when you're used to that, and then you're going to go to another one, your muscle memory will have gone. That might well be the case for some other classes as well. If there's a particular talent that you haven't been using in Nighthold, and you're suddenly going to start using it in Timos Argyris, that it might be worth practicing with it. I like Divine Hammer. Get nice swirly hammers going around you. And I'm using a hammer for transmog now as well, because I put myself in, because when I was someone was making this up for me, this little chappie. He said, what sort of gear do you want it in? So I put on the transmog to show it in the armory that I wanted, which is the Martial set, including the hammer, which I've left it. I'm keeping that transmog at the moment as well, because I do that's the one I always go back to. It is a bit silly though, having what is an AoE talent for a single target, but anyway, that'll be for the rec one. We're doing the live rec Q&A this Saturday, so we'll be able to talk all about that. No, I'm not talking about paladins. I'm just that was a quick aside. We'll stop with paladins now, because I've got a paladin one coming up this Saturday, so we'll save all of that for that. In terms of my knowledge of other classes, it's minimal. I have to know a little bit because I raid with them all, but it's fair. You have to know just about enough so that if someone tells you, for example, "Oh no, my class can't do that's not very good at that," that you can say, "No, that's rubbish." So no, I'm gonna have to ban the specific paladin questions. Really. Oh my god, we don't have low mobility. It's just not as good as many others. For raiding, it's fine. Frost DK, best DPS, we'll find out. They were in Nighthold. Well, for melee anyway. But they might be... I don't know. Because I think, as far as I understand it, Frost has just been brought down a bit to the point where you get a genuine choice between going either Unholy or Frost, as I understand it. In terms of other ones, I don't really know. Warriors are all over the place again. I mean, they're never going to be bad. Do I know if there's a lot of AoE in Tomb? There isn't a great deal, as far as I can see. Again, I've all I can do is look at encounters and listen to what like Fat Boss and people like that say about them. But this guild, this is my Yes, very good skit. We've already mentioned this one. This is the new guild. Murloc Death Squad. You find it hard catching up in dungeons compared to playing a warrior rogue. Well, what you want to do then is you want to equip yourself with Sephir's Secret and the legendary boots. Because and then keep like interrupting, stunning things. And then you'll suddenly have loads of haste and there's loads of movement speed. I mean, I don't do that. I just put up with it. The thing is, you only really struggle to keep up with them on like the easy ones, so it doesn't really matter. It's the tough ones where they can't get too far ahead anyway. Like I was just doing an Arcway 16, and in a couple of weeks, I mean, we 3-chested that, so that wasn't a difficult one with the group we had. But there was no problem keeping up. I mean, I did actually use Sephir's Secret, I have to say, but even then. But, you know, we're quite... I'm going to say we're quite survivable, at least, in dungeons. But I died 3 times. Although 2 of them were because of a spirit adding in, where we didn't want it, and you really don't want a spirit adding in as a surprise. But obviously warriors are going to go charging off. You just expect that of them. But they go charging off and get themselves killed, it's fine. I do sometimes wish in Mythic Plus that tanks were not allowed movement speed increases. Because that's sometimes an issue. But that's more of an issue for healers. As long as the healers can catch up to them, that's their lookout. I'll get there in plenty of time. And do what I can. But as I say, you know, when you're pushing something, they don't get to rush off quickly, because that's not in anyone's interest. And you're taking so long on mobs. Because that's another thing. You'll take so long in a particular trash pack that your movement speed will be back up again. So it's fine. The only time I'm behind, as I say, is when it's an easy key. When it's an easy key, no one cares. What do people think of the new little chappy as well that someone did for me for the YouTube banner? Do I run Dungeon Alone in my guild? Yes, I don't like pugging. I don't... No, I'm not interested in pugging. I don't look at progress score because I don't pug, so I don't care. I don't actually know what the process would be if you had to pug what would be considered a challenging key. Because I don't. Like, for example, this weekend I was quite busy and I had someone visiting on Sunday, so I didn't get... I wasn't really available much this weekend. So I was leaving it, and then I was yesterday, I think, oh shit, I haven't done a key yet. And then everyone was in groups, so I didn't get into one yesterday. So all I did was come on today and say, right, need a dungeon, and grab some people together. It took about 20 minutes to get a full group, and then we just went into Arcway, so I've at least completed one. You accidentally pugged a dungeon yesterday. How did that happen? How do you accidentally get into a pug? Were they imitating members of your guild? Well, it depends. You can technically pug like with people from that have good experience. Oh, you miss your guild groups. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't like, because we reset on Wednesday. I don't do one on Wednesday or Thursday. Good evening, etc. Because it's after a raid night. It's, you know, I don't want to be staying up too long. There's always stuff to finish off and have another little quick glance evening at WoW progress for anyone who, because that's always a good time just to quickly check WoW progress if anyone's new's gone on there. Because someone, for example, in a raid, either it's not gone well and they've gone, stuff this guild, I'm not staying here anymore, or they've been left out and they're thinking, I'm being left out too long. So that's when sometimes people are more likely to flag themselves as looking for a guild. Good evening, I'm quite well, Per, thank you. Flag themselves as looking for a guild. So I always have a real sneaky look on just before raid time and just after raid time. And also when I'm trying to, although I have to do another one now because there's no point in bumping the old guild recruitment posts anymore. I have to make a new one when we've decided exactly what we want, because we now have... We've got a roster of 26, which is, under most circumstances, fine. No problem. But with it coming up to summer, and we may or may not, we've got a 50-50 potentially of a decent hunter joining us. And if that happened, we'd probably be okay for the time being. So it'd be minimal requirements. But the problem with the summer raid is it's making sure that you've got the decent roster on any given night. So we've got to, with the new website, we've had to ask people again. We'll have to remind them tomorrow during the raid to put down when they're away over summer, so that we can work out if there's any dodgy times. Now, in my luck, it'll be when we're on the tough boss, where we need the same people to sort of get on it and learn it. It's always a very, very dodgy time. The same with Hellfire Citadel. Literally 2 years ago, wasn't it? Hellfire Citadel came out at pretty much, I think, the same time. Be interesting to actually look up the exact date that did come out, because I don't think it would have been very much different. I'm trying to think now, because I remember I had to, because at the time I was with a partner and I had to go on holiday for 1 week during summer, and we had to book it at a time when I didn't know when it was coming out, so I booked it for the first week of summer, just for the hell of it. And that turned out to be Missing Gorefiend. So it must have come out in June sometime, I guess. Hellfire Citadel, but I can't remember. But it's going to be like that anyway. So the guilds that keep it together all the way through summer will be the ones who will effectively profit in terms of how quickly they finish it. And also you'll have some guilds that won't be able to keep it together, because people, it won't just be holidays, I suppose. Some people will just decide that sunny weather is more appealing, and barbecues and things like that, and they'll come up with rubbish excuses to miss raids, and that could potentially cripple some raids. And then we, if we're not one of those guilds, then we can potentially actually nick some decent players if we do need to replace anyone. Well, it's super frustrating. Our guild, the guild I was in, actually, it wasn't much of a roadblock for them. I just missed it. That's all. I went on holiday just as they were about to start it. Literally, we just killed Kilrog, and we were just about to start on that, and then I came back off holiday just in time to see them kill it. So it was like 1 week. It took them exactly 1 week. How do we give loot in our guild? We use Loot Council. So we use RC Loot Council add-on, and people click whether it's sort of BIS, minor upgrade, major upgrade, that sort of thing. And we decide who it's going to be most beneficial for the guild. So you're generally prioritising people for whom it's a bigger upgrade, as long as they're also people who put effort into actually getting gear themselves. Obviously, if you've got someone who does, who can potentially get upgrades from certain things and don't try and do it, it's less of a feature now, really. Then you give it to the person who it might actually be a smaller upgrade for. But generally speaking, it's who it's going to be the biggest upgrade for, assuming that you're going to use them on what is going to be the most difficult progress boss you've got coming up, is how it works. Because that's ultimately what you need to think in. There's no point in giving out a really good piece of gear for it to be sat on the bench. Well, where we don't know about something, we will just straight up ask people. We can trust people to understand. It's not like a pug where it's every man for himself. In a guild, people are sort of incentivized to make sure that it goes to the most appropriate person as well. So we'll sometimes have to ask people just how good an upgrade is this for you, and how much for you, and so on, and would you use it on this fight coming up, and all the rest of it. Because so sometimes we won't actually know enough ourselves, so we just have to ask. Does Cut and Edge go away? Yes, it does. As soon as 7.2.5 comes out, as soon as Tomb opens, all the current cutting edges will no longer be available. But Chosen will still be available. Blizzard have said that. Well, you've got 2 weeks to kill Gul'dan. Hiya, Jack. Currently progressing P2, P3. So do I take it you've seen P3, but you are still also wiping quite a lot in P2? I suppose it depends when you started as well. It didn't actually take us that long to kill Gul'dan. My favourite boss in Legion so far. I don't know. Odin was quite good. I quite liked Odin. Tichondrius is alright. There's quite a lot of good ones. I don't know what my favourite would be. It might be Odin. I did quite like the Odin fight, because there was lots to do for everyone. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, P3, like, I think we got a bit broadsided, because when you talk to anyone who killed it in a reasonable amount of time, everyone always talks about P2 being the hardest phase. The problem then is people instantly think that that just means get P2 under your belt and P3 is a breeze, but that's actually not the case. Mechanically, P3 also requires quite a bit of work. And the problem is, it takes you almost 10 minutes to get into P3. So to learn P3, you're having to do about, what, 8-9 minutes worth of fight before you can even see it. And there are things you will have to work out, like the positioning, the relative position of the mage tank and the off tank, making sure that the people who are charged with getting the souls get those quickly, making sure that you kill the night orbs at just the right time, making sure that you charge up the other orbs things at just the right time. Star Augur is not my favourite fight at all. Not at all. But so yeah, you have to get P2 under your belt properly, but there are things still. You won't. P3 is not a breeze in the same way. Is a crafted belt worth it for a fresh anything? It is quite good, because you've got that movement speed if there's nothing in range, and you've got the the self healing, which you don't really need as a rep, but still, you've got 3 sockets as well, which can't be bad. So if you don't have a lot of choice of legendaries, yes, it is good, and now it's not bugged anymore, which is brilliant. It actually works properly, so that's quite. The Emerald Nightmare bosses, I wouldn't. The only one I might say might have been really good was Cenarius. Only I wouldn't dare say that because I was just on the boss all the time. So there's no. It was basically a training dummy for me until the end, when you had to do a bit of dodging as well. Good evening. Yeah, the 3. You get 3 sockets on something, that can't be bad. And as I say, if you've got no other. If you wear 2 legendaries, and you can get to wear 2 legendaries quite quickly now, because I know there's a time on, and you've got to get the order resources, but it's quite easy to get order resources now, and also they've reduced the amount of time it takes to do order hull research. The one-shot classes on Cenarius. With the Palaring, I assume so, because this has been done now for a while, and it takes no time at all just to change the stats on an item. So I would think so, but I can't remember. I know Sol Sacra was posting some sims with legendaries, excuse me, on Discord yesterday, but I need to have a proper look at them again. So I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's been putting up some of the latest sims, which includes 4-piece tier 2. You have to bear in mind, though, those sims you have to be very careful with these. Remember, they're not for your gear. Some of the items are more or less powerful depending on, and the trinkets is a good example of that, and the same will apply to any sims, will depend on, it's the gear they're using. Sometimes things become more or less powerful depending on what you got. So I know because I asked him what sort of thing it had, and he had, for example, 30% mastery and about 21-22% haste. Now, if you've got very different values to those, that can actually affect. So you still also need to sim it for yourself. Also, it included having 4-piece tier 20. You know, it was in like Tomb of Sargeras gear. Am I hyped for Tomb? As soon as I'm ready for it, I will be hyped for it. At the moment, I'm not ready for it, although I've got 2 weeks to get ready for it. Yeah, Hammer of Wrath. So I'm hoping it will be quite good. At the moment, until you try it out, we don't get to try it out, unfortunately. We don't do like raid testing, so I haven't experienced it. I can only see other, and I haven't watched people stream it either. But I have watched some videos like I say like Fat Boss. I've watched Fat Boss videos on it. That's the only one I've watched. But the guild will be ready for it. The guild is fine. Yes, summer raids are awkward. They're awkward for a number of reasons. Yes, it is exam season, although that's at least at the start of it, I guess. And also summer in general, people having to go off on holidays is always a problem. And it is the reason why we are, although under normal circumstances, we would look at our roster now and go, it's fine, sorted. At the same time, we can't just jam it full, because then you create a situation where it becomes more unstable. If you have too many in your roster, first of all, people will quickly see that, you know, there's going to be absolutely crap loads of people on the bench if everyone's there, and you would expect everyone to be there where they can during like progress, especially early progress. And also, you're just spreading gear out too thinly as well. And when we don't even do split raids, that's just fatal. So it's a really delicate balancing act, because we already know from Nighthold that it's not even easy to replace with good quality people anymore. There's a little bit of luck required, it seems to me, or I don't know. Well, whether they still bring it out, I was saying this to someone else who was asking me about it. They'll take what they think are the best people. If you miss out, and as a result of missing out, you don't get like the good trinkets or set bonus or whatever, and when ultimately they'll try you out by taking you on a heroic, assuming you're talking about mythic raiding, and if you don't look like you're like staking a claim for yourself, then it is going to be tricky. You need to, at the very least, make sure that you know the fights as well as someone can do without doing them if you have to miss any raids. That's all there is to it. But it is not an easy thing. It's not a good thing for the guild if people have to miss, and it's not a good thing for the person either, because when they come back, there's no guarantee. I mean, like when I said about I went away on holiday for a week, so that meant I missed out on a week's worth of upgrades from heroic and stuff like that. So I came back, and the first boss we did after Gorefiend was Socrathar. Fortunately, I absolutely beasted it on Socrathar. There were people with like 10 item levels ahead of me. And I absolutely mugged the... well, my overall damage was actually pretty good, but on the, whatchamacallit, as the priority ads, absolutely beasted them. So I was alright for a bit. 10 out of 10 Mythic Guild, yeah, it's tricky. You'll just have to see. I mean, several people will be going away for a week now and then. It's just awkward at the start for you personally, because that's when there's the biggest influx of gear. Also, bear in mind that Blizzard have also confirmed that there's no new reroll token for it. It's the same ones that we're using now. So we need to sort of make sure that for when Tomb of Sargeras comes out, that we can have as many as possible. Because remember, you'll be doing several runs, so it's really the case that you want 6 the day before it releases, and then you can you can spend those and then go and get your normal 3, and then maybe others from like missions and stuff. Will we start with heroic in our guild? We haven't decided. We didn't last time. We did normal, because although there's there's pros and cons to this. Generally speaking, heroic is, excuse me, best for loot distribution, because if you do it on heroic, some people will be after particular items. So let's say someone's really after a trinket. So if you do normal first, they might get that trinket on normal mode. And then when it comes to heroic, they might coin the heroic one, which means the normal one has now gone to waste. So it's best to do it heroic first and then normal. However, there is also a danger, especially when you don't do, like we do 3 nights of raiding a week. There is a potential danger that it shouldn't hopefully not happen, but if it did, where you've never done these fights before, you haven't done any raid testing on the PTR or anything, so when you go in, it's the first time you've done any of them. You can obviously bludgeon your way through normal and learn some of the mechanics, and then put you in better stead for getting through heroic. Whereas if you do it the other way around, there is a risk that you can spend too long learning the fights and maybe not get the full clear. So there's always that call to make, but we haven't decided yet. So you have a roster of about 35 people. That's ridiculous. You can't have a roster of 35. That's absolutely insane. Yeah, we ideally want 6 on the character. You've got the 3 available in Dalaran. You always get, like, you often get a couple of others as well. You may well on that week have a mission. We may even, no, I don't think we've got time walk. Excuse me. I don't think we've got time walking that week. Oh dear. Yeah. Oh, I can't remember then. Whatever. But yeah, for looty purposes, it is best to do heroic first, at least up to a point. But Aris wants us to do split runs for the first boss at least. So, but that all depends, I suppose, on how many. I think we've got enough numbers to do a split run. But it's whether we've got enough tanks and healers. But I have no idea, Per, how your guild is managing with 35. It's absolutely... You like, people are doomed because you can't actually be spreading your gear out amongst 35 people. Which means some people inevitably are being passed over. Well, then how are they supposed to perform as well anyway? Because they haven't got the gear. Even if they were of equal... So they've got to be better to do more damage. But if they were better, they would presumably be getting that gear. So absolute madness. If I was at least 10 of those people, I would be going elsewhere. Would I like to watch your Paladin logs? I say, yeah, you won't be able to link things to me. You'd have to, if you want to send me, like, look, you're better off trying to find me on either Discord or a direct message on YouTube or something to get links to me. I wouldn't be able to click it here anyway. I'm not on Twitch. Well, I'm broadcasting on Twitch, but I'm on a different program for which I'm streaming. So the reason for the massive roster is that a guild of equal progress to us disbanded. The GM wanted to move the server, the guild didn't, yeah. And in the night, the GM just disbanded the guild. Pro. So you got, but you didn't have to take those players. I mean, obviously you nick any really good ones. But 35 is... I don't understand why they joined even. Like, there's 2 sides to this. One is, what sort of madness makes you think you can make 35 work? The other is, what are those people joining a guild with a roster of 35? I wouldn't even join one with a roster of 30. Do I take class-oriented questions? I don't really have any insight into Fury versus Arms, I'm afraid. Other than that our Fury Warrior will still be playing Fury, so I imagine that at least they are equal, if not better, to Arms. That's all I would be able to say. Yeah, but... Well, this... I mean, the friendship groups... I mean, I talked about that in a video, didn't I? The friendship groups things. Yeah, you understand that. At the same time... If there's that many of them, why didn't they just make another guild? Not that I'd advise that at the moment. Well, no, at the moment, if they were on 10 out of 10 as well, you could actually potentially. Fury got the coolest. Well, I don't know about the colour. The actual mount itself is. It's a proto Drake type thing. They just look gormless. The only reason I ever rode my black proto Drake is just because you can't get it anymore. You got it for doing what was one of the easiest achievements in the game. Just happened to be an early one. And no, actually, well, it should have been the easiest anyway, or one of them. But you couldn't get it after that. But yeah, well, it's still a proto Drake. Proto Drakes just look gormless. I don't need a mount that looks gormless. Self-fulfilling prophecy thing. It is, absolutely. That is the problem with having too many in your roster. You create a situation where people realise that there's going to be people marginalised in that guild. So well, you do one of two things, actually. No, there's one of two ways guilds sometimes try and manage it. Either some players have to be marginalised, which means they're basically never getting in unless there's mass absences. Well, why would they stay there? And all they have to do is get it into their head that they'd be one of those people, even if they wouldn't be, and they'll just look elsewhere. Or the second thing is you rotate, not for the purposes of taking your best, but you just rotate for the sake of rotating, and then you're not taking your best groups, you're spreading your loot too thin, and you weaken your guild. It's all a design. It's all wrong. So it's a mad situation. Well, what would another? This is the worry with friendship groups, and this. I mean, we've taken some friendship groups, and we've had to have very frank conversations with them in what would happen, for example, if we took, let's say we take you, and you two end up doing really well, but you two don't. What would be the situation then? Because you know full well with a friendship group, the chances are the situation would be if they didn't all pass trial, or if they weren't all getting a decent amount of progress time at least, then they'll disappear off elsewhere because they've joined because they want to raid together. And if that's what they want to do, then it's an all or nothing thing. And I have seen friendship groups sometimes online. They often post on official forums, more likely than WoW Progress in my experience. And sometimes you look at them, let's say there's 3 of them or even 4, but you look at them, there's like a couple of them are really good and you think, oh yeah, wow. And then at least one of them, I'm not saying all the time, but a fair number of times, one of them is absolutely dreadful. And it's like, I wouldn't even want to take these on an outrun. That's always a no-go, of course. They're just hoping, the 2 good ones are just sort of hoping they can get into a guild where they're so good they'll just take them, and hope to carry the other one. But you can't really carry too many players in Mythic, and you slow yourself down when you try. Proto Drake's your favourite mounts? Ugh, they're awful. They're the second worst, the only worst types. At least they've got a bit more detail in them than those like Netherwing Drakes in TBC. They were really, oh my goodness. They looked like they didn't have a brain cell between them. I don't generally like the dragon mounts. Like, some of the dragon mounts look quite good. The ones that are sort of based on Alex Strauss, the ones you got from like Madness of Deathwing look okay. I am mount shaming, yes. But they've got the big horns. I don't like the big horns. No, you can't ride. They're too small. They're too feeble. Hi, Yucca. No, I haven't seen you for a while. No, good mount. The only good looking Drake, what's it called? Sandstone Drake looks quite good, which is handy because I use that quite a bit because it's good for ferrying around my alts when on my second account. But I never did that. All the stuff that came in later on in TBC I didn't bother to do. So the Ogrelar and Netherwing I didn't bother with. What are my thoughts on other people speaking about Rhett? Well, they'll do it anyway. All I am hoping with, the aim with me in that case, is to make sure that at some point I can become well known enough that people go to me for the detailed thing. Obviously, if you've got someone talking about specific classes or specs that they don't themselves play, anyone watching it, it's not the person anyone's free to talk about any class or spec that they like. You know, it's not Preacher's fault. If he wants to talk about them, he can talk about them. If anyone watches his stuff knowing full well he doesn't play those classes and specs, and, you know, reads too much into it, that's their lookout, really. If you want to find out exactly how a class or spec's doing, you go and follow someone who's playing that class and spec. You like, hang on a minute, Alexational. So there's some words here that don't really belong in the same sentence. I like how my Tauren Paladin looks. I'm not really sure those words belong together. I mean, I know Gordon Ramsay doesn't like pineapple on a pizza. This is like strawberries on a pizza. You like how your Tauren Paladin looks. No. No, I can't get those words together in my head. Right, let's have a look. Let's go back. Pear saying something. I think what it... Oh, no, heck. Come here. Hang on. Where's my chat viewer gone? Sorry, I've got to scroll up a bit. What it was for them is they were a group of 12 and our guild is on a very small server. So they were a bit off being able to create another guild. And joining a guild and expecting to all raid was not really an option. Oh, well, if some of them just want to be socials, but then they should just be socials. You know, they shouldn't be. If you're saying you've got a roster of 35, I'm assuming you mean of raiders, officers, and trials. So they should just say that they want to be socials. In which case it's a benefit because you've got more for your outruns. Oh, yeah, I remember you doing your Overwatch. Belf, well, only Blood Elf because you've got no other option as Horde, really. I mean, Paladin, well, you can understand in TBC why they put had Paladins and Shamans be both factions, but they don't really belong. Yeah, well, he may well have leveled every class. He doesn't play them. I've leveled virtually. You know, I mean, last expansion, there's nothing else to do. I leveled multiple of some classes. I wouldn't necessarily be able to play them in a raid. I mean, I would be able to learn if I practiced, but then as soon as you stop practicing, you stop learning. I like pineapple on pizza. Oh, don't get me wrong. This is only Gordon Ramsay's beef. I don't know what his own problem is. I absolutely like pineapple on a pizza. I like pineapple. And at the end of the day, my attitude is I like pineapple. I like pizza. Why wouldn't I like pineapple on pizza? But strawberries doesn't work because it goes mushy if you try and cook it. Some people put baked beans on pizzas. I don't get that. I've never tried it, to be fair, but I don't get that. Racial, the only thing I missed about the Belf racial was the interrupt for like Mythic Plus, but I can live without other stuff. Yeah, if you've got very good players, I would certainly take them. But I would have, if it was me, and I know that we would do this in our guild, we would be brutally honest that a roster of 35 is not a non-starter, and that only the best of them would end up in our core raid team. And that's all there would be to it. Peas and mayo. Well, I assume the mayo was added after it was cooked. You surely don't put mayo on a pizza and then put it in the oven. Yeah, that's the thing. See, a lot of people as well, I've sometimes had to back preach up a few times because there'll be some times when people think that what he's saying is an objective fact when he's actually expressing an opinion. Now, okay, sometimes you can argue he's not always clear about what's an opinion and what he's trying to say is a fact. But a lot of it is opinion. And when it comes to anything on playstyle, it is necessarily opinion. And people can have whatever opinion they like. Have I tried strawberries on pizza? No, but I know what happens when you put strawberries in the oven. I don't imagine that the tomato base helps them firm up at all. 42 traits is nothing. I have that on a character I don't even play. Like, we've got people like in the guild who've come, now that we've sort of reformed a guild, we've got people come back or change character, and they're still expected to be up to 52 artifact power for when Tomb of Sargeras comes out. 52 artifact power, sorry, 52 traits. And some of them haven't been playing, so their artifact knowledge is way behind. But they'll still be expected to do that, and they will do that. There was talk about starting a second raid within the guild. What, Team 2? But then again, that can be bad. Yeah, it can be. Team 2 is what that is. Guilds that have 2 raid teams, I can only think of one reason to have 2 raid teams. Having a Team 2 means you get people who go off and do the raid. They'll be a bit behind you, all right? But if you have a bit of an absence, you can always nick one of the Team 2. Or if one of them starts to distinguish themselves, and you can use them as a feeder team to promote into your Team 1. That is the benefit of a Team 2. The benefit of the Team 2 to the players in Team 2, however, is much harder to divine. I don't know why anyone would want to be in a Team 2. And in any guild as well, like Scrubbusters on our realm, for example, they have a Team 2 called All Stars. But I see no benefit in them in being in it. They get the Scrubbusters tag, but they're not in the main raid team. They're in a Team 2, effectively. In fact, not even a Team 2, like a Team 7, really. Amount is trying to play is really critical because a lot of time you can't actually play all the classes to the level at which you'd be able to talk about them in the same way that someone who focuses on like 1 or 2 would be able to. But people should be aware of that. People should know that. You know, people should know that if you're looking at that, all you're going to see is some general insight into a class that's being played casually. So it's other people's fault. You know, if people want expert opinion or even just straight up facts about a class, they should go to their class Discord and find out who does guides and read those. The Team 2 gets an inroad into a good raid group if they distinguish themselves, yeah. Otherwise, the others can't raid or need to find pugs all the time. No, they just have to find another guild. I mean, it all depends. Like some people, like you say about, or someone said about the friendship groups, some people want to raid with particular people. Now, it's not, okay, if people want to do that, that's up to them. It's not an attitude I've ever understood, because you can have friends in the game without even being in the same guild as each other. You know, as long as you're the same faction, you can still do other stuff together anyway. The only thing you can't do is the current mythic raiding anyway. But you can still talk about it in your respective guilds. Sometimes there's an advantage in having friends in other guilds because you get to share strategies as well. You get to discuss that and swap ideas. As long as you're not in proper top guilds, because they won't allow any of that business. But in most other guilds, then there'll be that benefit. So I've never actually understood the benefit of actually raiding with your friends. It's like one of those things. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I don't see the problem. Because we've got Battle.net now, we've got all sorts of ways of keeping in touch and still playing with each other in the stuff outside of raid. You can still do Mythic Pluses together. You can still do like heroic stuff together. Oops, hello. Or anything like that. So if people want to do it, that's fine. I'm not saying that, but I just don't get it. I don't get the benefit, really. You just make the people you raid with become your friends. Well, there you go. That's the best way. I mean, most of the guilds I've been in, and I've been in quite a few, I've got on very well with. There's only a few that I would describe as, in fact, literally 3, that I would describe as having a toxic atmosphere. Most of them are absolutely fine. The reason for moving on or moving to a different one or joining one is purely raiding reasons. Only in 3 cases was it because I couldn't be doing with the poisonous atmosphere anymore. I mean, it used to be... I don't know. It used to be more of a thing, didn't it? Some guilds taking 2 teams. Or even 3. But I think that was more of a mop thing. It became a thing in mop. Even then, it wasn't the majority. It was only still. But it seemed to be more prevalent then. And I think that might have been when sometimes you had a 25-man group and a 10-man group in the guild. DPS Sims. I hope you don't mean one's comparing different classes, because it will do anything but. I have had a look at Sims relating to my spec, my res, but not in terms of actual numbers. I don't trust any comparison Sims, because first of all, for there to be a valid comparison, you have to assume that every single person who is involved in doing the Sims for their spec is doing them to an equal standard. Well, I get the impression that's not the case. The other thing is, those Sims will be based on, first of all, a given set of gear, which will not be the set of gear you start off Tuma Sargeras with. This is the thing that people need to remember. Those Sims will be using a particular set of gear, which is usually gear from that tier. But here's the thing. You won't be in that gear for several weeks at least, by which time Blizzard will have changed things anyway, because they'll have got their live data, which they always like, and they'll have made some adjustments. So what's the point? And the other thing is, it will be done for pure patchwork fights and of a specific fight length, which again may also not be valid. And then you've got to ask yourself this. When you're looking at those comparison Sims, who decided which legendaries they should have on? Who decided which trinkets they should have? So I do not trust at all. And also how many traits on the artifact weapon, because that has a tangible effect as well. So there's so many things that make the numbers completely unrelated to you and your guild, which is the important thing. And the last thing you want is some guild saying, oh, we're not going to take, you know, whatever enhancement shamans this time, because look at the Sims, they're propping up the bottom. Whereas your enhancement shaman might be doing brilliantly well compared with the rest of your roster. Sorry, I think people have said stuff. Hold on. Outbid on the tier 3 druid shoulders. Those are the ones with blowtorches in them, aren't they? Well, if it's to finish off your set, then yes, spend every penny. You've got all the rest of it, you might as well finish it off. We run 2 rets as well, so I hope they're in a good spot. I am not confident they are. I'm not at all confident. Not based on Sims, but based on how people have actually been doing when they have been testing on the play test ROM. But again, that doesn't tell you everything either. Flex nature of heroics certainly does take away the need for a team 2. And then you have to ask yourself, what's the benefit to a mythic raiding guild? Again, not a lot. Because you've got to have someone who manage it as well. I mean, I've known a couple of guilds, not been in them, but known some people in guilds that have done one. You need someone to manage that team too as well. You know, then you've got to ask yourself, what's in it for them? Challenge no longer exists. It's not that I've moved guild as such. Everyone who was in challenge, bar a person, has joined us with the new guild that we made. It's a little bit complicated, but it's related to the fact that there is only one way to demote a guild master, and that's to make another guild and everyone go to it, ultimately. So we're in Murloc Death Squad now. Still think it all depends on what boss fight it is. Well, of course, there's that as well. Like, even on a pure single target fight doesn't necessarily mean it's a patchwork fight as such, if there's quite a bit of movement. Did I see the interview of the Encounter developer? I did. I was going to do a video on it, but when I watched it, I just thought, no. I was slightly annoyed with Slootbag during it as well, because he kept asking questions and then getting a response, and I was thinking, but then he didn't ask a follow-up question. And it's like, now he might not have got a good answer on the follow-up question, but he didn't ask them. Like, the very first question I seem to remember was, or one of the first questions, he was asking them, are you happy with the 20-man mythic thing, or do you foresee a time when you'll either reduce or increase the numbers in it? I wish he hadn't said reduce. Let's steer clear of that shit show. And the designer basically said, yes, we're happy with it. Now, at that point, I immediately thought to myself, okay, so what he's going to ask now is for their reasons. What are their reasons that they're happy with 20? And he didn't. He went straight on to the next question. What? And he kept doing that all the way through. I was quite impressed with him, though, because when Blizzard's webcam broke, which was a bit embarrassing, he was relatively quick to the mark in drawing stick figures for both this guy, I've forgotten his name, and Law. That was quite good. But yeah, the actual... No, so I didn't really feel that I got anything worth talking about from it. Apart from something I'd gleaned before I even watched it properly, which is about using the encounter, using the environment, sorry, as part of the encounter. That's interesting. Let's have a look. First week of the raid is when people really figure out what's strong and what's not. And realistically, unless your world rank is 1 digit, it's not the most important thing. Well, they'll change it anyway. Because what Blizzard always says, you always get people going, right, there's an issue here, there's a problem here, blah, blah, blah. And Blizzard always say, we haven't really got enough data. We ain't got enough data. So then the first week comes out, that all of a sudden they've got loads of data, then they make changes. So, yeah, I mean, it is just silly because you cannot base anything on it. The Blizzard are not going to consciously allow a class or spec to be useless. They don't seem too bothered if one ends up being too powerful. That's my only issue. Like, I would prefer it if they consciously really tried to keep them, because it doesn't matter what order you're in either. Like, you could be bottom of the meters, but if you're only like 2% behind the person at the top of the meters, who cares? Doesn't matter. You're all doing about the same. But yeah, sometimes when you've got someone who's way ahead, they don't tend to fix that too quickly. But if someone's way behind, they will usually do something. It might not be the right thing, but they will usually do something. What happened with our old GM? I think he's realm transferred and gone somewhere else to do a bit of casual play or something. The land that defined Vikings. I'm not going to get into that argument. I don't know who owned them. Obviously, I know from where I come from in England, we are aware that it was the Danes that were invading us because we've got Denmark just to the east of us. If I got a boat and went east, I would hit Denmark first. So the Vikings that invaded my particular homeland were certainly Danes. If that strong spec isn't ret, oh yeah, obviously if the strong spec is ret, we get nerfed immediately. Naturally, that's what happened with Convergence of Fate. You nuked us, yes, you did. Yeah, that's right. That's how Britain ended up owning half the world, because we were invaded by literally everyone else in the world. I think we basically, over time, worked out everyone else's tactics, and then we formed them together into this great amalgamation, and then basically nicked everyone else's country in return. That must be what happened. Because we are the ultimate mongrel nation. We were invaded by everyone for like 2,000 years. Well, 1,500 years, I suppose. So yeah, we did. We made a new guild, basically. Well, yeah, I don't know what Blizzard do sometimes. But I'm not going to play the victim card too much. But it is noticeable that if anything is really strong for Rets, it gets nerfed immediately. If anything's really strong for some other classes, it sort of gets dealt with at the end of the tier when it doesn't matter anyway. Like our Fury Warrior was laughing at the nerf to Draft of Souls. He says, I wouldn't have used it anyway in Team of Sargeras. So he's had his benefit from it. Although it is quite funny, for ages, like I got a Draft of Souls from my very first Nighthold cache, a 900 one, and he didn't have a decent one for ages. He's only now just got, I think it's a 910 or a 915 Draft of Souls, but he's only just got it when he's only got like another couple of weeks use out of it. So he didn't have it all his own way, but he still did. I'll tell you how much damage he did with it when he was first using this thing. We had to bop him because he would just rip aggro off the tank immediately. There's nothing anyone could do about it. So we had to put bop on him to keep him alive, really. But I'll just have to see, because I didn't get Convergence of Fates until very late on as well. So I'll have to hope that the trinkets drop a bit better. I also hope Conqueror drops a bit better, so I can at least get the 2 set of that fairly quickly. I'll probably have to wait for the 4 set till everyone else has got it, because it's not that strong, really, or not worth it. Probably other Conqueror users probably get more use out of the 4 set than I will. Well, don't want to dish the dirt on what happened. Like when this sort of thing happens, it's always sort of fairly unpleasant in many ways. So I'll probably talk about it on the Patreon video diaries, but yeah. The bottom line is we just had to make another guild, but with everyone joining it, apart from the GM. All very sad. What do I think of the new class mount? I haven't bothered to do the quests leading up to the new class mount. That's what I think of the new class mount. I am still on the kill 100 demons in Asuna. I will do it just for the hail of completing it, but I am not at all impressed. If it were a Pegasus, like the thing is, the way I viewed it, this was a mount that was coming out on for the same patch that brought flying with it. It should have been a flying mount, as in a proper, what we've been waiting for such a long time, a proper Pegasus type mount. And it's not. It's just a horsey that's not even as good a horsey as my vanilla one. So I wouldn't use it. When I get it, it will just go in the stable along with all the other mounts that are just left there to starve. Really curious about the Cradle of Anguish trinket as Rhett. Let me think. Is the Cradle of Anguish one the one with the stacking strength? I remember them by what they do rather than their names. It's not that it looks bad, the Ret Horsey, or the Paladin Horsey, I should say. It's the fact that it doesn't... There's nothing new about it. It's a horse. I've got horses. Plus, I don't actually like it as much as my vanilla one. I don't have Eye of Command. So yeah, the Cradle of Anguish one will be a good one. But again, it's all dependent on us not getting a massive burst of damage that knocks us below 50% health. If we can behave ourselves, or if it's a fight that allows us to, then it'll be a safe trinket. It'll be like a stat stick. It'll be a nice safe trinket that'll do a decent amount of damage. Because the problem with like the Spectre one in theory, well, not even, well, it does look quite good, but it's only going to be good if no one moves the target away from the Spectre when you've dropped it. Can also kill the demons in Suramar. Well, it really doesn't matter. I'm on 40 odd of them because I've not had any call to kill demons in Suramar or Asuna. It wasn't me that had the big problem, although I ran out of defense really. But yeah, I mean, you could sort of tell when we did it and we created the new guild, everyone moved over immediately without asking any questions, which sort of tells you that it's, you know, that sort of basically demonstrates that it was the right thing to do. Because normally, I mean, you imagine in your guild if the officers suddenly disappeared off in the night and made a new guild and then said to everyone, "Oh, by the way, come and join this guild," people would ask questions. No one asked any questions with us. Expecting the priest to get a Pegasus mount. No, they don't deserve a Pegasus mount. They can have a cloud. That's what they should have, a cloud. Flying cloud. We should have the Pegasus mount. Holy Griffin, that would do as well. Something with wings, though. Are Warlocks and Paladin only ones who can't fly with the new mount? I don't know who can do what with it. They do all fly. They're all flying mounts. But in terms of ones that look like they should fly, I don't know. I can't remember. I did look through them when they were, because they were announced a very long time ago. I remember looking through them. A few stuck out. As I say, the Shaman one sticks out because it looks really good. The Druid one sticks out because it gives you nightmares. The Paladin, obviously, I spent some time looking at it, hoping to see some wings underneath something that I couldn't quite see, but no, it wasn't anything. Why does everyone like the Shaman mount so much? Because it's different. It looks different. Like, you think about the other mounts. The Warrior mount is a Proto-Drake. You know, you can say that it's got a bit more detail than most Proto-Drakes, but it's still a Proto-Drake. We've already got Proto-Drake mounts. I can't remember all of them. The Paladin one is just a horse. We've already got horses. Doesn't matter how much extra detail they add to it, it's still a horse. You know, the Druid one is an owl. Well, it's just an owl. It's an owl that was probably designed by the same person who designed their seal form, because it looks a little bit deranged. You know, and you just go through the list and they're all things where there's already mounts like it. And then you've got the Shaman mount. It's like, oh, there's nothing like that. It looks totally unlike anything else. We've got Raven mounts as well. Like, you know, all of these things we've already got. I'm not saying it's just a recall of those ones. It's not. It's designed from scratch. But it's still an example of a mount that already exists in the game. And probably several mounts that exist like that in the game. So the Shaman one looks really good. Specifically because it is very different. Hunters get to ride a triggered Druid in kitty form, yeah. I mean, a Hunter in theory is my main alt, so I suppose I should get to it. I haven't even done... I've hardly done any of the Legion Fall campaign on my Hunter, though. I haven't even finished up my Paladin, of course. Because this is, you know, this is the really busy time for me. It was last year as well. This is the last half term, the last summer term, before I finish for summer. So I'll get no respite at work. What eye level is my Hunter? I can't remember. You could look up Wigglebow on the Maelstrom. I think it's about... I don't know. It must be close to 900 now. What's the lineup of trinkets Ret will be using in TOS? If you look at Sol Sacra's sims on a single target fight, it's looking like Vile, the poison one, and Spectre of Betrayal, but that assumes no movement. Ones that might realistically be a better bet. Infernal Cinders obviously could be, depending on how many other people you have it in your raid and what item level you can get. So in practical terms, you might well be also thinking about Infernal Cinders. And someone just said it, Cradle of Anguish, I think. The one that stacks strength could also be really good. At the same time, the poison one is supposedly really good as well. So those are the 4 ones. I mean, the Umbral Moonglaves could be decent for tough Mythic Pluses. In other words, Mythic Pluses where when the tank gets hold of the trash, you sort of stand still for a bit. Oh, sorry, is this bad? I mean, every past class mounts are just different looking versions of existing mounts. Well, it baffles me that there haven't been that many class mounts, have there? In fact, isn't this the first time there's been a full set of class mounts? Or am I forgetting something? I think this is the first time there's ever been a full set of class mounts. But... yeah, I think it is. But yeah, I don't understand why we didn't get a Pegasus type mount. I didn't get it. Are the secondary stats on the ring still shitty? No, they're better now. They're not better to the point where it becomes the clear Biss, but it now goes into the mix. Horn of Valor is the best. Well, in terms of trinkets that you'd get from elsewhere, obviously if you can get it at a high enough item level, things like Horn of Valor, Faulty Countermeasure, Arcano Crystal will still be very, 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 very good. It's just that they're more difficult to get on those very high item levels. Admittedly, for Mythic Plus, they're going to be increasing again the, you know, the baseline item level of the one you get from your weekly cash if you do it at a high enough level, like 15, I think it's going to be. So we will get higher item level stuff. So in theory, if you got lucky, you could end up with like a Horn of Valor at high item level. Or you might just get lucky full stop. There are sims on the Hammer of Wrath Discord, yes. If you look in the pinned messages on the Retribution one. So you've got a 9055 command, that can't be bad. Faulty count. FC, is FC for faulty countermeasure? Or am I thinking of something else? And I mean, the ones I have a 900 Scorpion trinket, which is only the baseline mythic one, and 915 Convergence of Fates. In terms of ones that I occasionally use, a 900 Horn of Valor, which I sometimes use that on a few fights, an 890 Hunger of the Pack, which, and also an 890 equivalent stat stick of strength and crit. But the 890 Hunger of the Pack, the advantage of that is if you kill an ad, you get a bit of a speed boost, so it's quite useful for ad fights or just Mythic Plus. Yeah, I have Convergence 915. And it will, I mean, that will also be a top trinket if we can get it, you know, it's a decent item level. Like to begin with, I'm likely to use Convergence of Fates on a lot of the fights because 915 is a decent item level. If you can get it to an even higher item level, then you'll probably use it throughout, but you're unlikely to get it at high enough item level. I mean, I suppose we're still going to get the missions. We will still get the missions. So you might get it from a cache. How significant is the nerf to Convergence of Fates? Yeah, it was nerfed at the start of Nighthawk. They can't nerf it anymore for us. They already nerfed it to the point where it hardly ever procs. We get like 1.2 ppm. So that's like roughly 5 seconds knocked off a minute. That's pathetic. So they can't nerf Convergence of Fates any more than they already have for us. They could nerf it for other classes, but they can't nerf it for us without just removing it from the game. The only way they could nerf that is to give it a negative ppm, which means it adds time on to your cooldown. So I don't think we need worry. It'll do what it does for us. But that's what I mean. We realistically only get about 10 seconds off with it, and that's not reliable. So it just allows you to potentially, like sometimes you just get to a situation where you could have just done with Avenging Wrath coming off cooldown, or Crusade realistically, 5 or 10 seconds earlier. Like has happened at the end of P2 on Gul'dan, for example. And it's for those times that Convergence of Fate is good. Yeah, don't give them ideas. Once you introduce them to the idea of negative ppm, we'll be buggered. We'll just have to use stat sticks forevermore. Which is fine too, stat sticks, and at least reliable, but I only have 890 stat sticks. I am more looking forward to getting the chest, because that is going to be useful in more situations. Not just in the raid, you've got to think about Mythic Plus as well. Anyone who does raids will do Mythic Plus. And the chest, my goodness, it's going to be incredible. On because imagine that, you talk about Retribution Paladins, you know, having to catch up to people in front because we're slow. It's all the more time to build up those stacks, and then we go straight in with a Divine Storm and blow the hell out of everything. The chest is still good. Yes. Still one of the best. Obviously, anything that in the state it is in now could well be in a different state in 3 weeks' time. So remember, it's 2 weeks' time before Tomb of Sargeras comes out and 3 weeks' time before Mythic comes out, which is the important bit. Blizzard will be working very hard to be analysing the data from that normal heroic week to make sure that they've got some sort of stability for the Mythic week, because they don't want to be mucking up with the Mythic World race. There is no race for heroic. No one cares about that. But for Mythic, people do care. Blizzard do not want to be throwing a spanner into the works on that. So where things are now, and that can include tier sets, bonuses, all that's much less likely to be mucked about with. But legendaries, even abilities for classes, stuff like that, trinkets, all of these things can easily be massively changed in the next 3 weeks. And at any time in the next 3 weeks. And they can be changed on an almost daily basis if they want. Is there a specific trinket you should be going for? At the moment, what? Just go for anything you can. Like Convergence of Fates. If you're thinking Mythic Plus, then you should be going for Horn of Valor and Faulty Countermeasure, as always. But Convergence of Fates from Nighthold is not necessarily the only one. Scorpion's Trinket is still decent. The chest is a tier thing, but again, it's one of these things. Like, to begin with, let's say in the first, let's say you've got a couple of pieces of Warforged, or if you're really lucky, Titan Forged tier 19, and then let's say you're in a guild that does split runs, and you get your 4 set tier 20 really quickly. There is an argument there for using your 2 set plus your 4 set, and then using, like, not instead of the legendary cloak, you use the belt in the ring. But we'll talk about that on Saturday. Things may have changed for Saturday anyway. But there's lots of things that, and for everyone, in terms of decisions about whether you use a 2 set and a 4 set, depends on whether you can even get the 4 set or even the 2 set. Like, if Conqueror drops at roughly the same rate for us, at the same rate as it did in Nighthold, I won't even have 2 sets for about 2 weeks. What do I think about the Elemental tier set? I have no idea. We don't have an Elemental Shaman in our guild. Not out of choice, actually. We were actually actively looking for one a while ago. Couldn't actually find one, a decent one. But when will the next build come out? What build? Do you mean the PTR for Argus? You have to be a bit careful when you talk about, like, best shamans, because sometimes they complain. Sometimes it's valid, and sometimes it's not. I mean, it may be. I don't know anything. Oh my goodness! Is the Paladin Discord going to post the ideal guild build? Yes, but you have to bear in mind the only reason anyone posts BIS lists, and sure enough, even I will probably sneak it into the guide that I'm doing for 7.2.5, is simply because people just ask for it all the time. With Titan Forging and sockets and things like that, realistically, it doesn't mean a lot. All the BIS list is based on, it's like pretend there's no such thing as Titan Forge and there's no such thing as sockets, which would be the best gear to get from that raid instance. Because the other thing we have to bear in mind now is there's also stuff from Mythic Plus. Like, you might say, okay, that's the BIS neck from Tomb of Sargeras, But there may be a better neck, better itemized neck from a Mythic Plus dungeon, and you know, if that Titan Forge is up, then that would be better. So Titan Forge makes a right mess of Bislis. But there will be one. If there isn't one already, there will be one, I'm sure. And I will put one on my videos as well, but I will put it with a big warning that Titan Forge makes a complete mockery out of it. Well, this is the tier 19 two-piece is actually very good. But there's going to come a point when the item level of the tier 20 gear you get in is just going to be too great, and you will stop using tier 19. Like at the moment, I am thinking in terms of using two-piece plus two-piece. Because first of all, I'm fully expecting to say that I will want two-piece tier 20, but there'll be lots of other Conqueror users, and I'm sort of okay with a lot of other people getting the 4 set before me, because I'm okay using 2 set and 2 set. That would be decent. I would prefer it if in the next couple of weeks of farm I could get some Titan Forged bits of tier 20. Preferably, I'm trying to think now. I think the helm and the shoulders. Yeah, helm and shoulders to stay at tier 19 ideally. And then get the tier 20 gloves and legs, I think is what I want. But that's just personal stuff. We keep straying into ret territory, I keep noticing. Someone needs to ask some non-paladin questions, because we're gonna cover all this, as I say, in the ret Q&A on Saturday, where I shall rip off Sol Sacra's Sims from Discord, and we can actually talk about that. Yeah, well, it has to be, because they've announced the date. What healers will our guild play in Tomb of Sargeras? The healers we've got, ultimately. What we have is a Mistweaver, a Resto Druid, 2 Holy Paladins, and, well, what was a Holy Priest, who is now re-rolling to be a Resto Shaman, because we don't have a Resto Shaman, and, you know, their Spirit Link Totem is very, very powerful. And they have other useful abilities as well. So that's what we will go with. We'll go with whichever... Most fights, of course, need 4. The odd one will need 5, and the odd one will need 3. But we will just go with whatever is the best. Any future for Disc Priests in Rage? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Disc Priests. We have been open to getting a Disc Priest. We just haven't been able to get one. We did have one that was sounding quite interested at first, but we've had a few people like this actually. They're just worried that they won't be able to compete, which is a bit silly, really. What end boss was more difficult for our guild, Helya or Gul'dan? Helya, because when we first got onto Helya, she was still in psycho mode, and we didn't have any priests, so we were snookered. We couldn't do anything other than just learn the first 20 seconds of the fight. And then Christmas came along, and we didn't just have a week off for Christmas, which is what we should have done, but we couldn't help it because loads of people just went off for a massive amount of Christmas. And then what happened is, after in the new year, Blizzard nerfed Helya massively, but we didn't have a raid together, so we were waiting for people to come back after Christmas. And then they did, but then so much time had passed that it took some time to get them back up into the swing of like serious progress raiding again, and we ended up having to kill Helya during like the first week of Nighthold or something. We didn't quite get it just before Nighthold, so that was a disaster. Whereas Gul'dan, by the time we got to Gul'dan, we had all the 7.2 traits and loads of gear and stuff. It was relatively easy. Holy Priest will be really good with Foresight. I mean, I don't really know about healers, or healing officer for that, but we haven't got one. Our Holy Priest has gone to, as I say, Resto Shaman, because Resto Shamans are really strong. There's like You never not want to have a Resto Shaman or a Holy Paladin. What do I think of the artifact weapons this expansion? I like the artifact weapons, and I would not at all have been disappointed if they retained them forever. It'd just be a thing that they kept changing. You know, maybe they reset the traits, not obviously the same ones, but like design different or do something. But I quite like the artifact weapon system. I don't like the artifact power system though. Rec questions really should be for Saturday, but I think we'll be okay, based purely on the fact that we're always okay. Yeah, I know. With the chest, it's had a bit of a nerf. I think the nerf is only there to stop us using it on single target, because for single target even it was looking very strong. I think it's like a Divine Hammer's nerf. It will still be strong in AoE, I'm sure. Oh, good. 4 out of 10. We've got 2 more weeks to get the other 6 then, haven't you? My Sasha. But like I said, gear, like 16% buff to our spell. Yeah. Well, I don't know, it's 16%. I can't remember the number. We're getting a nerf to Divine Hammer, but they're not trying to nerf our overall damage. They just want us to stop using an AoE ability in single target. So they're nerfing that, but buffing other spells to compensate. Oh, has it been increased? Oh, well, even better then. Even better. Even less reason to concern ourselves with then. I mean, I'm never worried about competitiveness as such. I know that we'll never be allowed to be stunning in the same way that, say, Shadow Priests were at the start of Legion, and Affliction Warlocks have been since, and Frost Death Knights. They'll never allow that of Rets. And I don't think it's because they've got... And people think, oh, they've got something against Rets. I don't think they do. I actually think they quite like Rets. You can't... Or certain aspects of the design team must do. Because we get so much cool stuff. That's inevitable. But there's too many of us. We're just too popular a class. Will ES ever be viable? For brief periods. Possibly. Can I see a point in Legion where we will actually be using Execution Sentence? Not unless they want us to. And they clearly don't want us to. Like there was I did a video on using it when I can't remember, it was maybe a bit before Nighthold, something like that, because I can't remember if it was 7.1.5 or 7.1. There was a patch, one of those 2 patches, where there was a little brief window of opportunity where under certain conditions it was good. So I did a video on how to use it specifically. And then it just wasn't again. We have a spot in the guild for a Disc Priest if they are stunning. The thing is, we have sort of got 5 healers, but none of them's a priest. Because our priest swapped to a shaman. But obviously you got to think about it this way. With a 6th healer... On every fight, you've got someone sat. So it'd have to be stunning. So if you're only leveling it at the moment, probably not. Not yet, anyway. Yeah, maybe have a look at Argus. But it is strange how so many classes are so difficult to get hold of at the moment. But then I said that about Warlocks. You know, it was only a few weeks ago I said, we've got no Warlocks, and I'm not going to be able to get any either, because our world rank's not helping us out. We'll have to wait for Tomb of Sargeras, get some early, quick kills, get our world rank up, and then I'll be able to get one. And now we have 2. Just out of the blue. We've also done much better on majors as well. We've got a couple. We've sort of had 3 majors. One of them's going to be too busy this summer, so they're stepping back. But we've still got we've got another one in, so we're okay for those. We're still just after one really good hunter, but there may be one who will join us. We won't find out really until, well, later on tonight, I think. You main an elemental shaman. Well, obviously you have to make sure you're comfortable with whichever language is going to be the one that they're going to be talking on in the raid. Because it's bad enough with some people when they've got music on and can't hear what's going on. But if it's the language that's a barrier, then that is a big problem. Like, obviously I can see that your English is good quality, but, you know, if it's like you're not keen on talking in it, then that would be an issue. But remember, the English-speaking realms tend to cover lots and lots of nationalities. I think in most guilds you'll see is a good mix of people from all over Northern Europe. We've got someone from Germany in our guild, in fact, I think. But never anyone from France. I can never recruit people from France. For some reason. I've almost given in now. There's lots of Swedes everywhere. I don't know if there's particular realms where they're especially common. But they're all over the place. Swedes, Norwegians, Dutch and Danes especially as well. Ah. Well, ironically, my second best language is German, but I hardly speak any German. I used to be alright at it, and then just literally stopped because I had no need of it. I didn't know anyone who spoke German for like for the last 20 years. So about 20 years ago I was actually okay, I could get by. And now I can't. In fact, I remember quite a few years ago now when I stopped playing World of Warcraft for a bit and I was playing Lord of the Rings online. And I had someone trying to ask questions. But he was asking in German, obviously it was German. Or Austrian, I don't know. And I tried to answer, because I could answer his question in German. So I answered it, but then he started hanging on to me, he started following me around and asking more questions. And I had to try and explain that I only had a very basic level of German. But I don't even have that anymore. French people do tend to stick to French realms, yes. I'm not so sure about Germans, though. There's always seems to be a good smattering of German players on the English-speaking realms as well. And Spanish players, it was noticeable, yeah, because the Spanish realms weren't there from the start. Because I remember we had quite a few Spanish players in my guild in vanilla in the early part. And then there was a bit of an exodus when they opened up Spanish realms. Same with Italian players. There's a lot more Italian players, or I don't come across as many now. But it's natural to do that. Portuguese. We had a Portuguese warlock this tier. Not for very long. They seem to have a few language issues. It didn't seem horrendous. You could sort of understand you if you spoke. I think sometimes they didn't understand when things were said quickly, like during a raid. Between the raid, if you talked specifically to them and told them something, they sort of got it. But they weren't very quick at responding to stuff in the heat of battle, so to speak. But they didn't stay with us very long. They got themselves boosted and then went to join another guild. Do I think Blizzard will ever use a mega server type technology? No. They should. There's no reason not to, other than the fact, they make a load of money from transfers. Realm transfers, which is an automated system, It doesn't need anyone to do anything with it other than maintain it, debug it, that sort of thing. They make ridiculous amounts of money from it. There is no way in hell that the people in charge of the money would allow. I'm sure the developers would like it. There's so many advantages to doing it. But the people in charge of the money would never allow it. Even though it would actually increase the number of people playing the game. I'm not going to try and argue that they'd make more money overall. I'm sure they wouldn't. I'm sure they've worked that all out. But they do lose players that they wouldn't lose if it weren't for the fact that sometimes people get into a situation where they have to realm transfer or just quit the game, especially on smaller servers. So yeah, if they combined it all, that would make everything a lot easier. You wouldn't get as many guilds collapsing then. And that means fewer people would stop playing all the rest of it. But they wouldn't make as much money. Because if I were to transfer a character and faction change at the same time, that's about 6 months worth of, that's half a year's worth of subs to transfer one character. So you can also see why it's really difficult to recruit as an alliance guild. There's a time when I think it's difficult for lots of people to recruit. Massively more difficult for alliance. Because I mean, I think about it, we recruited 6 people towards the end of Nighthold that specifically wanted to be Alliance. They came to us specifically because they wanted to play Alliance, and there weren't that many Alliance guilds. Have a rec question, can you ask it? Well, you can ask it. I'm going to prioritise non-rec ones, but I don't seem to have a lot at the moment. I mean, I'd be okay with the money on it. It's not like you do it all the time, but it would cost me a lot of money to transfer characters, and especially if you had to faction transfer. In fact, it would be a double whammy, because not only if I had to faction transfer would I have to become ugly and boring and living like boring buildings, but I'd have to pay hand over fist for it, because it's a ridiculous. I mean, it went up recently as well. Costs went up, so absolutely ridiculous. It gets quite depressing as well when you're looking through WoW Progress to find people, because you look at the Alliance players first, obviously, and then you have to trawl through the Horde ones, and you know full well that if you find any decent ones, the chances are they're going to say bugger off to you. When a fight starts, should we use Judgment before Blade of Justice with the Peer 4 bonus? You're only talking about one Blade of Justice there. It will make no difference. No, you shouldn't actually do anything different. When people have simmed it, it doesn't actually work out as a benefit to consciously try and change your rotation, because you lose as much as you gain by doing that. Belfs are too pretty. There is such a thing as being too pretty. Well, a lot of people say that, so you'll be willing to transfer. What's laying down is the fact that no one can guarantee your satisfaction with the guild you transfer into. That's what puts off a lot of people. I've had a number of people where, in fact, there was one in particular. I remember a priest at a time when we wanted one, who said exactly that. He said you know, what if he transferred and he either didn't get on with the guild or he didn't pass his trial, and blah 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 blah, and all those are possibilities. But the bottom line is, he might have passed his trial, or he probably would have done. I mean, we didn't approach people who are unlikely to. We knew he could play the class, so that's half the battle. And as for not getting on with people, that's down to everyone's personally, whether you get on with people or not. And he would now be on 10 out of 10 Mythic. Whereas, because I kept tabs on him, because I actually tried to approach him again a few weeks later, when I noticed he was still in his guild that wasn't progressing very far, I approached him. Because what I thought to myself was, because what some people do is, they'll turn you down because they think they can get into a better guild. And sometimes they overestimate their own desirability. So after a few weeks, and they're still mucking it with their like lower progress guild, then you can approach them again. Maybe you get somewhere. So I did it again with him, and he said, "Well, it's the same thing. I don't, what if I don't?" So yeah, so it's one of those things. But it's not. You just have to go for it sometimes. I mean, you obviously have to find out as much as you can. You have to look at the logs and you have to think to yourself, am I going to compete with these people? And then you need to try and watch streams of them raiding and see, well, could I get on with these people? And sometimes you might get it wrong. I mean, I've joined 3 guilds where it was a big mistake because they ended up being quite toxic guilds. But you live and learn. Obviously, if you're very sensitive, you're the sort of person that's easily offended, then it's probably not an idea to do that because different people have different types of humour. But if you're the sort of person that doesn't get easily offended, then you're very unlikely to end up in a guild that is toxic. There are some, but there's not that many in my experience. Most people are fine. And even if you do have a toxic player in that guild, most people know to just ignore them. Do I ever PvP? Not very rarely. Very rarely indeed. Doesn't appeal to me in World of Warcraft. Prefer it in other games, but not World of Warcraft. So you G quit your old guild, but then next raid people started whispering me. Kind of sad that I left those people, but raids got cancelled. People quit WoW, so I left. Well, so you left. Hang on a minute. Let me get this right. So you left because raids were being cancelled and people were quitting. I left a guild towards a similar situation. It was in Mop. It was after we'd killed the last boss, so we'd cleared the raid, and it was that big long lead into the next expansion, massive lead into it. And we had a situation where we weren't. I wasn't an officer in that guild, but I kept saying we need to recruit. Like people weren't dragging their feet on recruitment, and I was even looking people up and saying, "Look, try and contact this person. Try and contact this person." And they took so long to make decisions on it that the people ended up getting other guilds. And we had this situation where a couple of people leave it, and it was looking very dicey. It was looking like, even though we'd finished, we were going to have to miss raids and stuff like that, even when we had stuff to kill. So I eventually left, and a couple of weeks later that guild did disband, not because I left. Unbeknownst to me, a couple of the officers were going to be leaving anyway, and so yeah, the whole thing collapsed because there was no one real. There was only one person who was willing to step up to the role of raid leader because the raid leader was going to be leaving, and it was not someone that the rest of the guild had, or that most of the guild had much confidence in, because apparently it was a person who could themselves be a bit toxic, a little bit, only a little bit, not to the point where I actually realised. But yeah, but that's just unfortunately the way it happens. You have to, if the guild can't survive, the reason you've left it in the first, it doesn't matter what reason you left it in the first place anyway. And if the guild can't survive, then it can't survive. Unfortunately, just if there are too many guilds for the amount of the available player base, then something has to give. I mean, we ran close a couple of times in Nighthold. But for the grace of God is the way it works out. But we've struggled on. Hopefully we won't have to struggle as much in Tumas Algaris. We'll go a bit quicker, but last time I left a guild because we wiped 100 times on Gul'dan Heroic. Supposed to be a mythic guild because you kill mythic Xaviers, yeah. Well, I mean, the hardest fight in that one was probably Il'gynoth. Realistically, Cenarius was also very tough. at the time. The thing is with Cenarius, though, that got a lot easier with more gear, because you can burn through those phases a bit more quickly. Whereas Il'gynoth remains difficult. Like, if we go and do Mythic Il'gynoth, we can wipe on it. Because it needs control. It's a control fight, it's not a DPS fight. And there's nothing that says lots of DPS but no control, like going back and doing an old raid for fun with very highly geared people. But Mythic Xavius is not a Mythic boss. Whereas, yeah, Gul'dan Heroic probably is. In fact, I'm sure it is more difficult than, even if you sort of take into account like a standard gear set, more difficult than Mythic Xavius just in terms of mechanics. But yeah, a lot of people have said that Emerald Knight. I don't know. I'm not saying I agree with this myself, but that Emerald Nightmare hasn't done the raiding scene much good, because people have done some Emerald Nightmare bosses on Mythic, think that they're up to Mythic standard, and then have fallen down at Trial of Valor and Nighthold. What's my opinion on time walking raids? I'm looking forward to them. I think they would be quite good. I mean, it depends on how much involvement there is with it and what you're going to get out of it, because at the end of the day, it's a gear-based game. But in concept, I think they're quite good. I quite like the fact that you have to get a group together as well, that it's a flex thing, rather than an LFR as well. But I haven't tried it out. But I am... Yeah, I think it would be quite a good idea. Excuse me. Would I go into Emerald Nightmare Mythic possible upgrades, or rather farm Mythic Plus? I'd rather do a mixture. If I had to do anything. I'd rather not do the same type of content too much. So I'd like to, you'd break it up. But with Emerald Nightmare, there isn't really much in there for me. And what there is, for anyone, has to Titan Forge up quite a lot. But it's all right doing it now. The only fight, because you burn through it really quickly anyway. The only fight where there's any sort of dread over it is Il'gynoth, because you can wipe on Il'gynoth, and then people deliberately get themselves killed on Il'gynoth trash. So yeah, if I could just like lose consciousness while Il'gynoth is done, I'm quite happy with the rest of the raid. Will I do raid with viewers? I've already started, sort of, streaming my Wednesday raids. So I did that last week. I'll be doing it again tomorrow. And the idea with that is, like, it's a bit awkward doing progress raids, because if there's progress raids, I can't have any chat visible. I need to focus on what I'm doing. So although people can watch, they can't interact. And even if I put like a banner saying so, some people will still try and talk to me and then think I'm just being ignorant because I'm ignoring them. Well, I'm not. I just can't see the chat and can't talk to them. But Wednesdays are, apart from the very start of a tier, farm nights. So I'm okay streaming Wednesdays. Do I bother to do world quests which reward you relics? If it's the Bish relics, yes, I do. I haven't yet got one that was an upgrade for me, but I will always do them just on the off, because it's silly not to, just even though it's, because it might, and then you're sitting pretty, aren't you? Are there any good guilds on my realm which don't raid so much? How can there be a good guild if they don't raid so much? I'm sure there are actually. It's a nice medium-sized server, the Maelstrom, so there will be some. In fact, I was noticing, it's actually quite funny. There was a guild advertising in trade today, because they were doing Mythic Progress. I don't know what they're on, but they said they were starting with a L'Oreal. They were asking for someone else, basically. They were saying it's a 19 out of 20 guild run, but we need one more DPS. And I was saying to the people in Discord, their requirements were lower than Heroic Pugs. because they were only asking for a DPS with 890 item level. It's like, you can't even get into a heroic Nighthold pug with that. And this was going to get you into a mythic one. Is it possible to take your own private logs and turn them public? When you say your own, you mean ones you've uploaded yourself and made private? I don't really know the ins and outs of it. I think it's possible to invite certain people to be able to see them. I'm not sure though. I've never had to do that. Worst comes to worst is you can, because you should always talk about your logs anyway. Like, you don't, I mean, if I'm doing an application, I don't just give them a link to my logs, I do. But I will also use specific bits of logs to highlight what I'm doing on a fight. And you can always do that with screenshots, I guess. There are guilds that do 2 days a week and do well. And there are some like that on our realm as well. You do have to watch out for those though, because sometimes they will spend the first couple of weeks of a tier doing more. So you have to be a little bit... It's always worth checking their logs to see how much raiding they actually do. And also, some will say they do 2 days a week, but they do 8 hours on each of those days. Because it's like the weekend or something. So in actual fact, they're raiding as much as like a full-time one. But there are some that just do 2 normal sessions a week and still do well. You do have to do the grind as well. It's not as bad now. I do very little grind now. It is a lot better since 7.2, I have to say. And it is looking like it's going to get better still in 7.2.5. But yeah, it certainly does look better. But it's not as bad now. And once you've got concordance, I mean, some people are still chasing the higher levels of it, but you really don't have to do that much. And we're getting our last artifact knowledge thing tomorrow as well. So after that, then it just becomes more and more impossible. Oh, well, okay, if you're 6 months behind. That would also suggest that your artifact knowledge is well behind as well. The artifact knowledge is the main stumbling block. Everything else can be caught up. Like if you were someone who'd been playing a character and not missed any time out on Legion, and you were going to roll another character and like re-roll, well, you can just buy them tomorrow. You'll just be able to buy them the artifact knowledge 40 tome, send it over to them. They've got artifact knowledge 40 straight away. They just have to then farm some AP. That's quite easy. Concordance does proc a lot, yes. So the first point of concordance is very powerful. Subsequent ones less so. Yeah, we've had a mage just join us again, who used to be in the guild, and they took a break off. So their artifact knowledge is now on, I think it's like 34. How much is the boot? It's just, it doesn't matter what it is. It's 1,000 order resources. So on your character, you can buy the catch-up tomes for any of your alts, anyone on your battle net, for 1,000 order resources, regardless of which one it is. But you won't be able to get the 40 one until you've got 40. Like, normally you can only buy one that's like 5. It's got to be at least 5 artifact knowledge behind. So when you're on 39, this is the irony, when you're on 39, like we are now, we can buy a 30 tome. Now when we get to 40, in theory we should be able to buy a 35, but what they've said is, to compensate for the fact, because the artifact knowledge was going to go to 50, and now that's not happening, so what they've done is like a compromise, they've let us buy the 40 tome with it. Did I see the new build? Anything that's come out today I haven't seen yet. So you're going to trial on Mythic Gul'dan progression coming from a 4 out of 10 Mythic guild. Yes, I'd be scared too. You just have to make sure that you understand. I think about it though. I mean, like Gul'dan most of it, there's not actually many mythic mechanics. Like in phase 1, positioning is different to what you would do on heroic. So you have to be very careful about your positioning. And depending on whether you're ranged or melee, depends on how awkward that is. Yeah, I saw that, Helen. Yeah, I did see the nerf to that. Phase 2, there isn't really any new mechanics in phase 2. It's just more brutal. So soaking the well is more difficult. That's why you ideally use rogues for it. But everything else shouldn't really be a lot different. And then phase 3 is the genuinely new phase. But even that, if you know what you're doing, isn't that bad. There's a bit of control required on not blowing up orbs too late or too early. Yeah, I saw, yeah, it's like a 40% nerf, basically. Can I imagine soloing Nighthold in later expansions? I've not really thought about it. I tend not to do a lot of soloing of raids. There wouldn't be much use to do it. Because there isn't, I don't think there's any really rare drops in it. Apart from, I guess, the Demon Hunter toy. Maybe I could do it for that. Are there any... What they usually... I'm trying to think if there's any bosses that would be very difficult if, you know, it was another expansion or two's time. Like Scorpion would be alright. Chronomatic Anomaly would be fine. Trilliax would be fine because you just burst them all down so quickly. Yeah, I saw the solo Chronomatic Heroic with Demon Hunter. Yeah. Alorial would be weird. I don't know what would happen on that. When are the next videos coming out? I have a short one planned, which in theory I might be able to do this evening. It all depends. I know what I want to say in it. It's a relatively short one. It's an idea I've got, which I'm sure Blizzard will ignore because they won't even see it, which is not Ret specific. And that, but it all depends, like, because when I was thinking about it, there's some footage I might like to get to illustrate the point, and then part of me also thinks, but it's not absolutely essential. So it all depends on whether I decide to. It'll be gathering footage that might delay it beyond tonight, if I decide I want to do that. But in terms of the narration, I've written some points about things I want to say. So in theory tonight, or tomorrow, if not tonight. So I was going through Nighthold, wasn't I? What was next? Croesus would be alright. Illuria would be alright. Tichondrius. Yeah, I guess. And the interview of Morgan Day. No, I said at the start, actually, I'm not going to talk about it in the end because I wasn't actually impressed with a lot of stuff that was said. I didn't think there was anything in the end worth talking about. So... which was disappointing. Because a lot of the time as well, he was being asked questions he didn't know the answer to, or he didn't know whether he was allowed to talk about it either. I mean, that's sometimes things we forget about. Like, you've got all these different developers working on different parts of the game, and sometimes they're just designing a little part of it, and they don't actually know what the other stuff that goes with it is. Yes, I'm sure there'll be something on that one I will want to talk about after. But that's our raid night, so I'll not get to see it live. And also the day after is a raid night, so it'll probably be Friday before I can get to catch up on that. I'm just trying to think. No, I can't think of any fights that would be problematic for anyone soloing in future expansions. Tea or coffee? I don't like tea or coffee. This is Robinson's Fruit and Barley. Cranberry and raspberry. Don't really like... well, I don't really have hot drinks. I don't like tea or coffee. Hot chocolate is really awkward to make. It's very difficult to get the actual powder to dissolve. so I just don't bother with them. I have hot lemon if I have a bit of a sore throat. And even though I've been coughing tonight, that's not because I've got a sore throat or anything. I've just been randomly coughing for no reason. I don't know why. But anyway, as a usual thing, we've got to the 2-hour mark. I'll give it another few minutes if people want to ask anything, and then we'll start to wind it down. Well, that's the thing, you see, I don't get this caffeine boost because I don't really, I don't drink tea or coffee. I don't drink cola very often. So I don't really drink or have anything that has significant amounts of caffeine in it. So I just go to work like bleary-eyed because I'm not a morning person either. I could probably do with a caffeine fix in the morning, but there's no food or drink I have that naturally has it in significant quantities. So I don't actually understand the dependence on caffeine that some people have. Because I see it when I go to work. When I'm going to work, I'll come past a corridor. There'll be like members of staff with a cardboard tray full of Starbucks coffee that they're taking to their office. But I don't get that because I don't like it. Maybe I should just take caffeine pills and simulate the effect. Although it's probably the only healthy thing I do, not having much caffeine. That and not smoking. So I should probably keep it that way. Well, I don't like either, I'm afraid. I have tried as well. Oh, that's good, Sashabra. Well, the new one will be coming out at some point. It'll be coming out before the patch launches. It's always very fiddly when I'm doing an essentials guide, because it does need updating. No, we're not going to advocate the use of hard drugs, thank you. But yeah, the essentials guide, it won't be out this weekend, but I will be hopefully getting most of it. I've already got some preparation work done for it. Do I think there will be a patch after 7.3? Yes, there'll be a 7.3.5. Whether there'll be one after that, apart from obviously the pre-next expansion patch, I don't know. I don't even know enough about 7.3. We know very little about it. Blizzard have kept a lot of it under wraps. Whether because they don't really need to whet our appetite, I can't actually decide with 7.3. The reason why we don't know enough about it, is it because there's no need to whet our appetites with it because there's enough going on right now to keep us occupied? Or is it because they've got something stunningly surprising happening? I mean, obviously, Terralion surely is going to have to feature in there. There's been a lot of talk, not a lot of talk actually, there's been some talk about, because we have to meet Terralion, we know that, we've had like the message and stuff like that, in some form. We're not just going to find him dead, we're sure of that. But will he be Terralion? Or will we end up fighting a corrupted Terralion in the Argus raid? So yeah, but that's what I mean, they're keeping so much of it under wrap. All we actually know is we're going to Argus, and there's going to be a new zone. Well, there has to be, because we're excuse me, we're going to Argus, and there's going to be a raid. That's all we know. Well, he might, but we don't know this. It would be disappointing. I would be disappointed if Terralion was corrupted. But there is inevitably going to be, Terralion is going to surely feature. But we'll just have to see. Exactly. But yeah, that's what I mean. They're not telling us anything about it. And as I say, it's either because they don't need to, or because they don't want to, which means they're keeping something from us to get us excited later on. But of course, as soon as 7.2.5 comes out, that means a few weeks later the 7.3 PTR will go up. So although obviously they don't put everything on the PTR to begin with, there'll have to be a fair amount. There'll have to be the new zone at least. Oh, right, yeah. No, we're going to corrupt Tyrion. But they could, in theory, do that with Terralion. because people are not that involved. Like, Terralion hasn't really featured in World of Warcraft. He's featured in the books, and he's featured in Warcraft 2, I think. Warcraft 2. But he's not really been a big feature of the World of Warcraft. So people probably wouldn't kick up a massive fuss if he ended up being corrupted. I would be disappointed. Whereas Tyrion, you've been doing stuff for him ever since Vanilla. When you had to go and get him some slugs. Yes, possibly. But I think most lore fans don't actually play the game anymore. So, but I don't know. They might not. But he will surely. I mean, he might just be there as part of the new faction that we're going to get, because we're going to get a new fact. They haven't said so, but inevitably we're going to get a new faction. Because again, reputation is going to be a feature, surely. He may just be the head of that new faction. I don't know. Maybe we'll have some Naru there as well. Oh dear. But it's all speculation, and I don't do speculation stuff really. No, I mean a faction like Armies of Legion 4, where you get rep, and then you can buy shiny things off their quartermaster. Good night. Yeah, I am going to sort of close it off now, as I say. I'll give it another few minutes in case someone wants to ask any last minute things. But then I'm going to sort of finish this off. I'll top and tail it as always and stick it on YouTube later. Although that always takes a little while. As I say, I'm going to try and do that other video first. It's only a quick one. I'll try and get that out. But again, it depends on if I want to do any, get any footage. Because there's some footage sort of I need to get from a couple of other games as well. How will single target be in Tomb? Not stunning. It should be okay. I don't know. You've got to think about it this way. It's not the single target nature of them. Like, take Star Augur, for example. The problem with that is not the fact that it was a single target boss. It's because it was a boss where you can't always get melee around the boss. Like, I always just stay out on Star Augur, like in the Fell Phase stuff, just so that we don't get a Grand Trine. So there's stuff like that. They are like buffing our spells, but that doesn't, I mean, looking at that in isolation doesn't mean anything. What matters is how do we do compared to others. But we usually do okay. We've you know, we are always okay. We're competitive. We know we're never going to be stunning, but we're never going to be atrocious either. I mean, AoE isn't completely absent, but I don't think it's a big thing in Nighthold. But I don't want to talk. I don't want to try and talk expertly on it when I haven't done a single pull on a single boss. All I've done is watch other people do stuff, and all I see when other people do stuff is what they're telling me that they've done, which might not be the same things that I'm interested in. We can do over 1 million single target. Briefly. I'm sure I can keep it up as long as a mage. Because most of the time, even on single target bosses, I'm not pure single target spect either. Like if I watch this, I'm not entirely sure what I would do if I went absolutely, completely single target. Like, even if I go single target talents, there'll usually be a trinket that's good for cleave as well. Even on Star Augur, like, because you've got the little ads at the end they need dealing with. There isn't really a pure single target fight in Nighthold. So there's always something to take some cleave for. I suppose Trilliax is the closest now with how quickly we kill it, because I don't think... Do we even if we get the ad, it's only at the end of the fight when we actually might as well just finish the boss off. So Eye of Command. This is the thing with Eye of Command. It's not a single target trinket. It's just a trinket that wants you to stay on the same target. Like, you could use Eye of Command really well on Scorpion, which is an AoE fight. But that's because you would still keep Scorpion as your target. Eye of Command only becomes an issue. It's a target switching one that it's not good for. So it makes no difference whether you use it on AoE or single target. Eye of Command. What matters is that you focus the same target. Yeah, I mean 910 Eye of Command and 905 Arcane. The 905 Arcano, you are stunningly lucky to get that. But even then, it will fall behind during Tomb because you'll be getting trinkets that are like 930. But yeah, in the here and now, obviously, that is a very powerful combination. But anyway, there will be the Ret Q&A, as I say, on Saturday. I'm sure there'll be loads of stuff to go through then. And we may have seen some new changes by then anyway. And yeah, I'll be streaming tomorrow with the raid, which should just be like a farm raid. Although, as with last week, I'm not going to try and stay in it if there's a boss where I don't need loot and some people do. So I may just go back and always go out and chat then. But I'll just carry on streaming with it. But I'm going to call it a day there. So thanks for coming, and until next time, until tomorrow potentially, then I'll see you later.